I know, it's been a while, but I thought, well, why not now? We can have a look at what's changed. Recorded an episode of Doing It for the Kids podcast today. Also, I'm in the middle of doing quite a big project repurposing online presentations. They were done live and we're now turning them into animations so that they can live on. I discovered that Frame, which is a video commenting tool, is actually included with Adobe. I used to use Whipster years ago. I've been using them to leave comments for the animator. He then makes changes, sends them back to me. I then have to take them into Final Cut and do the final mix. Yeah, it's important that I do that today because then I can send them to the client, and once I've sent them to the client for a review, I can actually invoice. So yeah, need to crack on. So not much has changed. Fair enough, we got a puppy in August. Actually, another thing that changed. Last June, I lost one of my biggest clients. I'd been editing the same podcast for nearly 3 years, every single week, which was obviously a big earner, but also a big chunk of my time. Like I'd sort of committed to that. And I also really enjoyed it. I felt part of a team, and I felt like because of the topic that we were really making a difference. I was really making a difference by being part of it. And they took that away overnight. They took it in-house for financial reasons. In fact, I made this video at the time. I just lost one of my favourite clients. And you've got to remember, it's never personal. It's always a business decision. And the fact is they might well, in fact, they likely will come back to you. So never burn your bridges. Also, it's a great reminder that you should never have all of your eggs in one basket. Also, it's a great reminder that you should always be marketing, always be putting yourself out there. Allow yourself to be disappointed, to feel dejected, to go and make a cup of tea and buy a cheesecake. I did buy a cheesecake. In fact, I bought a pack of 2 cheesecakes. I've already had one, which means I can have another one tomorrow. Allow yourself to be dejected, but then pick yourself back up and get back on with it. And you know what? This has happened to me in the past. Funnily enough, it's often an exciting opportunity that ends up coming your way. And would you have maybe got that opportunity if you hadn't have lost that project? Would you have had the time to take it on? Would you have been putting yourself out there with so much vigor? I have had new projects come in, a lot via LinkedIn, a lot via referrals, a lot by me showing up more, particularly on LinkedIn actually, which I plan to do more of this year. So work has come along to fill the gap, but one of the reasons that I was able to be okay was because I had money squirreled away within my business, so business savings. Often I work my big iMac during the morning and then after lunch switch to the kitchen so that I can work with him at my feet. Even that change of scene works nicely. Also going back to working in coffee shops just like I did when I first went full-time freelance. Anyway, I'm editing the Being Freelance podcast and I just want to show why I always get backups, not just one source of audio. Something happens at this point on her computer where she was recording her audio.
I that would be.
Cuts out and then...
Yeah. So I have like a Google Keep little notes app. So every time I come up with an idea, it goes in there. I'm an ideas person.
What happened to the audio? Thankfully though, I have got backup audio. Find a point where the waveform looks the same. When you listen to it, you'll be none the wiser. So yes, that was me and Erin. That's the video that I've just downloaded, so that's all set. Hang on, was that the dog? Can you smell my golf jumper from yesterday, can you? Nice. So yes, another Being Freelance podcast recorded. Oh, I'm sorry if I'm boring you. I now put them out every other week, which I find works really well for me because it's easier to manage both the production of them but also the promotion of them. Like, it gives me longer to promote that guest exists. All right, do you think we need to go for a walk, mister? We've been indoors too long this morning, haven't we? Gotta say, having him has given me an excuse. Well, not an excuse, like I have to go for a walk 3 times a day, but particularly at lunchtime. Like, he and I go for a decent walk, get some fresh air, whatever the weather. I don't know, I think it's good, not just to get the exercise, good to clear the air, rather than just, you know, if when I was in my office, I would just sit and eat lunch at my desk. Here I am, suddenly finding time for like a 40-minute walk. Unexpected benefit to mental health of getting a dog. Thank you, mate. Friday mornings are still co-working in the Being Freelance Community, and then we do the Non-Employee of the Week Awards. Great! Fogarty! Come on! I need to create the artwork and everything for this coming Sunday's episode of Being Freelance with Andréa Jones. Keen observers might be thinking, Steve, at the end of your last vlog, at the end of March 23, you were leaving your old office because you all had to leave because it was closing down. Why are you now working at home? By May, we were in a new co-work space. I did have an office. I decked it out. It was all right, but it wasn't soundproof. It was right next to a main road. That meant I was spending more and more time at home recording stuff. Plus, the heating, like, it wasn't designed to have separate offices in it. So the heating / air conditioning didn't work. Basically, if the door wasn't open to my office, the heating or the air conditioning wouldn't get in. And there was a day in the summer where I had the door shut so I could do a video call, and it was 36 degrees in there. It was not okay. So yeah, I gave it a go. But there comes a point when you start to realise that actually, because this isn't soundproofed enough, I'm spending more time at home recording things where I need decent audio. Plus, we now have a dog, who, let's face it, is fun. Plus, I'm paying more to be here than I was in my last place. And it adds up. Like, it adds up to thousands of pounds a year. And to be honest, this year hasn't been great, work-wise. And so you start to think, like, have I accidentally ended up in this paying for an office thing that I didn't need? Like, when I first had that office, it was brilliant because we were still in our small house, like our cottage. And so it was difficult for me to do all the live stuff I do with the community and the podcast and what have you. But now we're in a bigger house and I can have some space in it. And yet I'm paying for this place that maybe I no longer need. And I kind of loved having an office. I loved having this kind of broom cupboard-esque feel to it for when I was doing live video stuff, but financially it just doesn't make sense. Logistically, it doesn't make sense. So, time to call it a day. It's important to sometimes take a pause and think, is what I'm doing now the right thing? How I'm doing it, is that the right thing? Am I working in a way, working in a place, paying money for things and tools or locations that I just don't need anymore? Don't be afraid to reverse. Don't be afraid to reassess and change and go and do something different. Oh, and try and get an office where it's easy to park near where you've got to take your iMac. You don't want to be walking 5 miles with a Herman Miller chair. I said, but not much had changed. And I didn't really think it had. I kind of said it in a joking way because I knew that suddenly one of the first shots would be me walking with the dog, which was obviously a big change in our lives. But actually a lot has changed, hasn't it? Little by little, you don't notice the change, but it's happening. Oh my gosh, you watched till the end, you absolute champ. You can hit subscribe on the video, hit like, leave a comment. It genuinely lovely to hear what you think. Also, listen to the podcast, please, and come join the community. It would be so cool to see you in there. beingfreelance.com/community. That's all I've got.